Hey, I'm Chris Taylor. I just wanted to welcome you to my backyard.
Hey y'all, this is Jason Gould. Thank you so much for listening to Mastermind Midland. We are on my good friend Chris Taylor's back porch.
We've got dogs barking, cars driving by. We've got the grill firing up over here.
You're going to hear mowing yards. You're going to hear all of that. We hope it adds to the experience, and we thank you so much for participating and partaking in our conversation today.
Anyway, I'm going to ask Peyton again on practice on Tuesday. You want to be a goalie or you want to be on the field? And if he says goalie, then his dad can kiss my ass. I'll be like, I'm going to play the kid where he wants to play. And he's a good goalie. He's one of my top 2 goalies on the team.
There you go. Yeah.
Guess what? That counts for something.
Yeah, it's like they're 9.
Yeah,
they're 9.
High school level, guess what? If you suck, you don't get to play.
Yeah. True. Well, it's our last episode, man.
Last episode of season 1.
How are you feeling?
I feel hungry.
All right. Well, walk us through what you're going to be cooking today. What is on the menu?
All right. Today, last episode of the season, we want to go big because we're already home. And we've got 3 2-pound, this one's 2.45 pound tomahawk steaks. We'll bust these bad boys open and show them to you here in a little bit, but I want the flies all over them. We're going to be seasoning those up with TD's Brew and Barbecue, barrel-aged bourbon. Wow, let me get that out of my mouth. And that's going to be the sweet. We're going to throw some spicy with the TD's 3 chili cilantro around the edges. And then once we're done, I've got sauteed jalapenos, onions, cilantro, and garlic sauteed in butter to top the steaks with. So that's going to be great. We've got garlic parmesan marinated shrimp on skewers. We also have shish kebab, the vegetables. So we're going to be grilling those bad boys up. A little bit of salt and pepper and fresh fruit as always.
Surf and turf.
Surf and turf.
What did you want for the theme? You wanted like an Outback theme?
Kind of like an Outback. We're Outback, but like Outback down under the Australia. Something along those lines. An Outback Steakhouse sucks. I'm not a fan. Sorry if you are. They're terrible.
No, the service has definitely gone downhill.
The food has gone downhill.
Yeah. It's along the days where my dad's favorite movie was Crocodile Dundee.
Right.
Yeah, we're a long way away from that.
Yeah.
So, in the spirit of the theme, my hat today, I was trying to go down under, and I did not achieve it.
No,
this is not the hat.
If down under's in Cuba, you're winning.
I got this hat in Puerto Vallarta.
Well, close enough.
So, in the spirit of that, I know you have a Chris Taylor specialty for a drink. Walk us through it. What are we drinking today?
All right, man. So, what we've got going on, I know we previewed this episode before last. This is a Willet straight bourbon. Okay, this stuff is super delicious. I love the bottle. I think it's super cool. It's a really nice bourbon. It's kind of stitched in. It's 94 proof, so it's not as strong as some of the other ones we've tried on this podcast.
We've tried some strong ones.
Yeah, and we found that makes for either more interesting content or less interesting content. I don't know which, but
we'll find out.
I'm sure you guys are going to post on those and let us know what y'all think. You'll know which ones they are. I think episode 3.
3 is where I got lit.
3 was lit. So make sure, if you haven't watched 3, go back and watch 3. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. We're going to mix orange bitters and aromatic bitters today. We're also going to have kiwi that is diced and placed in the drink. We're also going to have the Amaretto cherries. We're going to sweeten it with agave. And we're going to use sparkling water. And then we're going to smoke it with pear wood. And then top it with the rind of an orange. So I can't even in good conscience call this an old-fashioned because it has some characteristics of it, but it is in no way one at all. So we're going to just call this a down under new fashioned.
A down under new fashion.
Okay. These are super easy to make, just more ingredients than usual. So I'm going to say easy, not necessarily simple.
So what made you think of this stuff?
I don't know. I just think of the way things taste together, and I try and put it all together. I do the same thing when I cook. I just think of the way it smells or the way it tastes, and I kind of imagine how it all blends together and try and come up with something that's balanced. It's like I want the sweet, I want the tangy, I want a little bit of the citrus and the bitterness and some extra sweetness from the cherries and all these things all working together, and then the smoke really just finishes it off and gives it that forefront aftertaste and just makes for a really interesting drink.
Well, put it together and let's see.
Right on.
Let's see what happens.
So we just start by adding the agave.
Okay.
Throw that in there. Cover about 3/4 of the bottom of your glass. Normally pretty good. The stuff's pretty thin, depending on which one you're using. If you got a heavier syrup, be careful how much you put in. Then we're going to go ahead and throw 3 dashes of orange bitters. Then we're going to throw 3 dashes of the aromatic bitters. And I've tried it when I was sampling this with one or the other, the orange or the aromatic, and really I highly recommend both if you're going to try and make this cocktail. Neither one is impressive on their own, even with the rest of the drink made up. It's just lacking.
Interesting.
So they work well together though. We're going to go ahead and add our sparkling water. This is unflavored sparkling water. To be 100% honest, I think that you could probably get away with lime sparkling water and it would actually still taste pretty good.
Okay.
I think there's enough room for that extra citrus balance in there to make that work. Then we're going to go ahead and take this chopped kiwi that I've got. It's diced up. And we're going to drop that in the glass. Make the nice little bubbles. Man, I'll tell you what, like, as good as this drink tastes, the presentation of it's just really cool. It definitely looks neat. It's got some of those more feminine aspects of a fruity drink, but when it's finished, you really can't deny the masculinity of it either. So it's definitely a well-balanced drink from both aesthetics and taste.
Interesting, man. Would you call this your masterpiece?
Man, when you're making drinks, there's no such thing as a masterpiece. It's just the best drink of the day.
Okay. So this is the best one so far.
This is the best one today.
Even more than the what did we call that one? A maple syrup sunrise?
When I was making this, I was going through my pantry thinking of what I was going to put in it and trying to figure that out, and I came across that stuff and I was thinking the same thing to myself. I was like, is this going to be better than the maple syrup sunrise? And I wouldn't say yes or no. They're too different.
Okay.
Because I really like the maple syrup stuff.
It was, especially with the cinnamon stick.
It was really good. So, cool. And we're just going to give that a stir. Let some of that ice melt down. And we've got a nice peachy amber color coming out of it now.
And then this is where the magic happens.
Cool. Yeah, we're going to take a little bit of that out. That is good.
Tasty.
Yes. Cool. And we're using pear wood chips. Let me throw a little bit more in there. And this kind of gives it a little bit of a sweet, but the pear is really kind of a neutral smoky flavor. It's not so acidic as some of the other ones are, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I really like it with this because this drink's really about a lot of really subtle flavor. There's nothing in it that's super bold.
Interesting.
And so it's different than a lot of drinks I make where you can really pick the individual flavors, and as many flavors are in this, it's really kind of mind-blowing that it comes out really as almost its own singular flavor.
I just love seeing that smoke come out of it.
Oh,
that is cool.
Cool, let's add a little bit more back to this one.
Wow, man.
There we go.
That's magic.
That's magic. So we've got the nice smoke, and we're gonna go ahead and throw these Amaretto cherries on one of these cool metal toothpicks I showed you guys not so long ago. Drop that in the side of the drink. And I really like these in these types of cocktails over the maraschino cherries. The maraschino cherries are just so overly sweet.
Yeah.
That I think that they take away from some of the other less bold sweetnesses in the drinks. And so I really like these. They're truly a good cocktail cherry. And we're going to go ahead and peel off that orange wedge. Wow.
You all right?
Yep.
Did you actually draw blood?
I did.
On a podcast.
I did draw blood on a podcast.
Dang,
so
man.
I told you this was going to lead to war, today's conversation. I didn't even know you could cut yourself with one of those things.
Yeah, apparently
so.
you can, dude. Your fingers cut up pretty good.
Yeah. That's talent right there. It's not that bad, though. It's more like a paper cut.
Sure.
One of those thin
Those are
little cuts.
irritating. Yeah, man.
So it'll be fine.
Just adds to the taste of the cocktail, right?
Oh, yeah, man. Sweet.
Yeah, just press it for a couple seconds, right?
Yep, it'll get there.
Let's taste this goodness.
All right, man. So, cheers to the final episode.
Man, can't believe we're here.
Blood, sweat, and cheers.
Bloods.
I think we just named the episode.
Yeah. I think so. Remember, we filmed this entire season on Chris's backyard, or in his backyard, on his back porch. And so, yeah, you'll hear dogs, and there's definitely one going on right now. There's actually a symphony of them. I'm getting one over there and two over here. So
Oh, yeah, we've got dogs in surround sound. I hear some kids yelling. I'm sure we'll hear some cars driving by. So it's just all part of the show. So sit back, relax, and let's dive into this conversation. Jason, you want to lead off with what we're talking about today? What do you think of that drink?
yeah, let's talk about the drink for a second.
Let's talk about the drink for a second because, man, it's just
This is
such
a hard one to nail down.
different drink.
First of all, it looks like $1 million.
It is just a cool look. I love the way this drink looks. And, I mean, you can see all the way through it. I think the seeds and the kiwi. And you can even taste the kiwi a little bit. Like I said, there's nothing in it that has a super bold, independent flavor. It melds well.
These are very soft tastes. It's just delicious. That is very interesting.
It's super interesting, but it's really good.
It's almost like, Luke, the rest of the drinks do have strong overtones. So it's like we know what we're going to get. And you don't really know what you're going to get with this.
Yeah.
And it definitely doesn't, whatever your expectation is, it definitely doesn't taste what it is.
Right. But it's still really good.
Yeah, I'd almost like to try that bourbon straight just so that I could get like a baseline.
I know, because you almost can't even taste it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is a genuine cocktail. I mean, it's a mixed drink.
That is darn good, man. Yeah, dude, cheers to you. You got you one. That is
Thanks, man.
awesome.
Thank you, sir.
People are going to be making this now. Holy cow.
Yep.
Well, we're definitely, this is, I'll just tee it up by saying, man, of all the conversations we had, if one can make a case that we were going to mess one up, this would be the one to mess up.
Yeah, but I feel really good about this one.
Sure, yeah, without a doubt. We are definitely going to go into this conversation structured.
Yep.
And I am going to lead that conversation today. And just so you guys know, I mean, I've got pages worth of notes here because we want to be as intentional as possible and as organized and focused in our thoughts. This is the last episode to wrap up this entire concept of the primary operating principle.
Sure.
And I don't want to end on anything other than a high note.
I agree.
So with that being said, remember, we have discussed, and I have the whole review here. For the first week, we talked about the who. We identified who we are.
Yeah.
And who we are in relation to the primary operating principle, where this came from, because this wasn't theory that we read in a book. And not to say that we're the ones that have invented this, but our interpretation of this has definitely come from our relationship together over the years and who we are as individuals. It's an extension of ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so that first week we really dived into that. That was a great conversation.
It was a lot of fun.
Second was the why, and we did a lot of vision casting. And vision casting is always fun.
It's entertaining. I mean, while you're it's an experience in and of itself.
Yes, and let's face it, leadership is vision casting.
Right.
You and I enjoy it because of our position as leaders. It's just something that, out of necessity, we have to do, and so therefore we enjoy doing it. And so it was a fun conversation because of that. But for the audience, that really did set the stage of why should I care about this? Like, and it's not looking at it from a negative standpoint of you don't want to be like this. The whole point of the vision casting was, man, you could be this, right? It's not trying to not be something. It's trying to aim toward transformation towards something. That's why that was a powerful conversation. The next one was where. Man, we specifically wanted to steel man our own argument and try and poke holes in it and try to see, okay, maybe it just applies for you and me, but maybe this doesn't fit for everybody.
Right.
And so that was fun just because we took the opposite end of the conversation. We were kind of antagonists toward our own premise, which was cool. Then we really talked about, so that was the first half of season 1. Then we began the second half of season 1 with discussing when, positioning and shifts. When do you actually shift toward a primary operating principle? And that was a necessary conversation.
I think so. I think there's a lot of value presented there.
Because if you're going to consider this, you have to be introspective, and you have to consider those things in your own life. So I really hope by you and I talking from our own experience, we were able to add value.
And help them just help you understand where your own commitment level is and to change. Because we talked about if you're not committed, this is not a space for half measures.
Exactly. And so that left to last week, which was kind of the meat and potatoes. We gave a technical breakdown. We discussed what the primary operating principle actually is in its formula.
Sure.
And now that leaves us to this conversation. So, I mean, first of all, step back for a second. People can say, well, why did you spend 6 episodes on a podcast breaking this down? It seems a little redundant. Well, no. Hopefully, if I categorize, all the different stages of where we've come, it just becomes where we've come in our series of conversations, and it becomes self-evident that, man, I mean, this is accumulative. You've got to really seriously watch one episode after the other. We have taken the time to bring you from point A to point Z on this journey every step of the way.
Well, we're trying to fit years of experience into 15 hours of content.
Yeah. And so, but I mean, I can almost hear in the back of my mind, like just get to it already. Why haven't you talked about today's conversation?
It all adds up.
Right? Yeah. Because today is how we're going to talk about the application / execution of how to automate the primary operating principle. And we spent so much time hammering relationship. Where people like, just get off the relationship stuff already. We get it, right?
We have definitely beat relationship like a dead horse, man.
And now, I mean, it's like, why haven't you gotten to this yet? Well, there's a reason why we haven't gotten to this yet, and that is for that reason. Because if we didn't take the time to lay the groundwork,
so many different angles of the relationship that you have to understand before you can start executing in the system to come back to that.
So with that being said, this week we are going to be specifically talking about general components of automating the primary operating principle. I say general components because we realize that if we're talking in a way that applies to everyone, we have to paint with of pretty wide brushstrokes.
Sure.
Right? Okay, so this last conversation, before we get into it, I want to preface right off the bat. We are working with some assumptions. Okay? So we have to agree on these assumptions before we engage in this conversation.
I think that's fair.
Chris Taylor, assumption number 1. is it fair to say that the audience of who's consuming this content, their wildly important goal, let's call it the WIG,
Okay.
to go off the 4 principles of execution, great book. So their wildly important goal is to maximize relationship focus in building their business.
I agree.
Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah.
Okay. So as we're having this conversation today, if that's not you, then we're assuming that we're not talking to you. Number 2, that this is not the norm in any industry, including whoever's listening in their industry as well, and will therefore require mindset shifts to implement what we're talking about today.
I completely agree. I see that a lot. I mean, I know I'm abnormal in my industry, you're abnormal in your industry, and from my experience in the world, every industry has people that are doing what we're doing, but it's not the norm. It's not the majority, and it's barely the minority. We're talking about a very small percentage of business owners operate this way.
So if you're going to have our level of success, you're going to have to realize you're in the minority. And so therefore, buckle up, because there's not a whole lot of support out there.
No, everybody's going to laugh at you. Everybody's going to call you crazy. All of my peers do. Yet they come and want to know how I'm doing it, and then they tell me and think that is preposterous. Or then I tell them and they think it's ridiculous. Like, that's not why you're doing so well. Actually, it is. Well, that's just ridiculous.
Assumption number 3, last assumption, that whoever at this point is still listening wants to hear about and believes it is necessary to successfully automate their systems to accomplish maximizing relationship growth. Is that a fair assumption?
I would think so. If you're on episode 6 with us of season 1 and you've watched the other 5 episodes, I would hope that you've kind of got a level of buy-in into what we're talking about, and that you're starting to think that it applies to you, or you already have realized and accepted the fact that this is for you. And if it's not, I'm not sure why you're here, but hopefully this changes your future either way.
Okay, so just important to lay the groundwork. That's where we're operating. Those are the things that we're assuming as we have this conversation. So if you don't fit any of those assumptions,
this probably isn't going to make perfect sense for you.
Yeah, and we're really not going to speak in such a way that's speaking to you, because we're speaking to people that fit these assumptions.
Sure.
But this is, okay, so now before I have the conversation, one more thing from you. Or before I get us started in this conversation.
Okay.
Do you need to set the grill?
Actually I do. I'm going to go ahead and fire this bad boy up, and I'm going to do it a little bit differently because we've got these monster steaks.
Tomahawks.
These monster tomahawks. They are not going to cook as fast as our little tenderloins do. So
right.
I'm going to start this grill off today at 450 and go ahead and get a front end sear. And then we're actually going to put them on the top rack after we sear them and let them slow cook while we get the vegetables on, and we'll finish off with the shrimp.
I'm a fan. Yeah, that's awesome.
So crank this bad boy up to 450. You know what, let's do 425. I think that one's going to work great. We'll try it there and see how we go. So we'll smoke a little bit here in a minute, but
cool.
We're on our way.
We're on our way. So logically then, with those assumptions, like, think of it as like a sales funnel, right? There's probably a lot of people that have come to this podcast that were like, first or second episode, that was fun, and they fell off, right? At this point, if we're at this point of the sales funnel, we legitimately have some people that are interested, that think that we have some value. What's our big ask for those people?
Really, if we've helped you in some way, or we've helped change your mind about how you look at the business world, then man, if you would like and subscribe, we'd really appreciate it. We'd love to be able to engage with you. So get on our Facebook page, get on our Instagram, comment right on the YouTube video or whatever platform you're watching us on, and get engaged. We do want to engage with you. We want to build a relationship with you as well. And we really want to grow all of our industries together. And our goal with this is really impact and changing the world, specifically the world of business.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I could add to that, I'm so curious to see who else fits in our tribe.
Sure. I'm excited to meet other like-minded individuals out there in the world. I don't care if you're in Canada or Italy or in California. If this resonates with you, then please join up with us and let's go out there and grow our businesses together.
And I'd say that's, if someone's like, why did you start this podcast? Like, well, that's the reason why we started putting our conversations on camera, was for that aim right there. Yeah, man. Okay. So, this conversation, to keep it as clear and focused as possible, we're going to break it into two: the principle and then the execution. And I think there's 4 primary principles of automation, and I'm totally open to the fact that I'm wrong about this, that I've missed the mark in some way, that this isn't exhaustive. So let me actually rephrase that. Yes, sir, you got the smoke.
We've got the smoke.
We have the meat.
We're not Arby's.
We're not Arby's.
And we're not sponsored by them either.
No, we're not. There's 4 general components that you and I have been able to identify. So those 4 general components of automation, we'll just call them principles. And they are, you need to automate. You need to put systems in place to automate chaos control of your whirlwind. And we'll definitely talk about what that is. Second, quality control for the time, price, and value of your offering.
Yes.
Number 3, you need systems in place that automate or promote individual accountability. And last, that measures success for the entire team. Generally, if you can apply those 4 principles, those 4 general components of automation, you should be successful in automating your primary operating principle.
I agree.
That you have enough automation in place to keep the relationship focus primary and efficient in the way that you and I have discussed in past episodes.
Yes.
Fair enough? Okay.
Fair enough.
So we're using the word system a lot. Let's stop for a second and actually define what we mean when we say system.
Okay.
I'll give my 2 cents and then I'll pass it over to you.
Okay.
Quite simply, in business terms, you have activity, you have goals, you have processes, you have systems.
Yep.
And each 4 of these things are different levels of what we would call the business experience, right? So the first level that you achieve is just activity. Man, you start this business and you are just doing everything in your power to figure out what tasks you need to do, what a workflow looks like, what's the activity of the day-to-day, right? And then if you're going to reach the next level in business, you need to figure a way how you can organize that activity to achieve a goal. And then when you can achieve a goal, you realize that your business isn't just one goal, it's many goals.
Series of goals.
It's a series of goals. And so, well, you need a process that directs or prioritizes those goals. So then your activity is subject to your goals is subject to your processes, and your process actually processes the first step of I cannot say automation with my stuttering problem. It's the first step of automation. And then the next level is system. And that's what we're talking about. Like, you've literally got to get to the level of where you're organizing systems. And systems is multiple processes, right? So you have one process that organizes this series of goals. Then you have another process that organizes this series of goals. And then you find a way to develop a system that prioritizes those processes.
And automates them.
So, like, you're literally stacking levels. You and I are at that level. But we did not start there.
No.
We started at the activity level.
Yeah, which involves the first leg of what you're talking about, chaos control. Because when you start a business, what do you start with? Chaos.
So let's go ahead and discuss that. So you need a system activity that is organized to a goal, goals that are organized to a process, processes that are organized in a system. Before I move on to chaos control, do you want to add anything to that or subtract from that?
I think
totally open to
that's
that.
a good basis. I really think there's multiple ways you can look at this. Don't take this as gold. This is just...
Take it as Gould.
Take it as Gould. And it's October. Ghoulish Gould.
Oh, that's a dad joke, bro.
Yeah, it's all right. I'm a dad. I got 5 kids, bro.
You got 5 kids.
Yeah, I'm a serial dad. So, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. The way we're breaking it down is not absolute. It's just the way that we've broken it down to simplify and break down the understanding of this conversation.
Yeah. Because it's right. So moving on.
You're gold.
Chaos control of the whirlwind. Then we can simply say the whirlwind is all the activity that is taking you away from your wildly important goal. There's going to be a tremendous amount of activity that is important, but it derails your focus. So putting systems in place to control that chaos, that has got to be one of your general components of automation, right? Okay, so executing. Let's talk about that. I'm going to give you a statement.
Okay.
Respond to it.
Okay.
To properly execute, you have to identify the various components of the whirlwind. Number 1. Number 2, you have to create standard operating procedures for systems to operate within.
Correct.
And then number 3, you monitor through weekly, monthly, and annual meetings.
Yes.
So there's an element of communication, of verification.
Accountability.
Identify, create, monitor.
Okay. So identifying, honestly, out of all those steps is the most difficult, in my opinion. I know it is for
Okay.
me. Most of the people that I talk to, that's their biggest struggle as well. It's identifying where all my problems are. Also identifying what those solutions potentially could be. Deciphering which ones actually fit the goals that you set for yourself and help you achieve those, and which ones actually might be a solution but it leads you away from your goals,
Okay.
because those things exist as well. You can have solutions that take you away from a goal.
Yes.
And we miss that a lot, and sometimes we get so deep into it we've got to backtrack,
Yes.
and we've all done it because we missed it. We didn't catch it. We didn't recognize it. And then also, even within your staff, recognizing who's the best fit for some of these positions that you need to fill, that make things flow smoothly, make things that people that present solutions instead of cause problems,
Okay.
if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
identifying those traits, because I've hired entry-level staff that look at the world and look at my business in such a way that they're actually really great innovators for certain things that I'm trying to change in my business, and they just see it, and I have to be able to see them and not look at them as somebody that's just needs to get in the program and get pushed through, and 5 years they might be worth something maybe if they try. That's a ridiculous thought.
Jim Collins, in his book From Good to Great, describes it as getting the right people in the right seats on the bus.
And that is a part of identifying.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to see those things. And that's a really big deal. It's a difficult task. It takes constant practice in everything daily, is just recognizing what's happening and why, and how we can manipulate it to achieve the outcome that's desired.
So let's try to get real specific, because that's the whole goal of this conversation. One, man, just some object lessons, right? So what I think of as far as like, to me, it's about organization, right?
Okay.
So if I put this on paper and I specifically address, this is the wildly important goal.
Okay.
and literally one or two things, no more than that. The whole reason why we've been able to focus on the relationship the way that we have in developing our own businesses is because everything centers around one or two central ideas.
Right.
And so for me, if I could hold it up, I actually wanted to bring it. I forgot it at my house, but I have a playbook of operating procedures. You have an operation manual.
Operations manual.
We have literally written this down on paper.
Yeah, we went through and said, these are all the problems that we have and all the problems that could arise. And we wrote a playbook that said, if this happens, you do this. If this happens, you do this. If this happens, you do this. Guess what? If I've got a book that tells them, I don't have to tell them. If I don't have to tell them, that means I can focus on something else in my business instead of holding people accountable. I still hold them accountable.
Sure.
Instead of personally holding their hand to get the task done.
And literally what you're doing when you're trying to control the chaos is you're realizing that you're going to war, if we can use that.
Yeah, I'm bleeding, so I mean...
Yeah, why not?
We're already at war. I'm at war with an orange peeler.
And you lost. And so
He just executed one of my fingers.
Right?
He's
won the battle, not the war. When he gets all of the actual digits, that's when he's won the war, right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about creating operation manuals, when we're talking about creating playbooks, standard operating procedures, it really is no more than envisioning, having the imagination to put this on paper and to think through all of the contingencies and to act like you're a general going to war.
Yeah, I think about my whole process. Like when I wrote mine, it's like, okay, what happens, because we've got a customer process. They come in, we do X, Y, Z,
Yep.
and there's all these steps that the customer goes through and then they leave. Now, everybody knows there's the behind the scenes that happens as well, so I've got to have procedures that set us up to get the customer in the door. Mm-hmm. And then I've also got to have things that happen after the customer leaves.
Yes.
Where's the money go? Where's the paperwork go? What gets filed? Who's paying taxes? All these different things. And so I thought through that entire process from concept to closeout.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean where I started with a customer and ended with the customer. That's everything that led to me having a conversation with the customer, all the way to me paying out the state and completing the entire transaction in finality and filing it in the filing cabinet. That's the end of the transaction, is when the paper's in the filing cabinet, money's in the bank, and the taxes are paid. And so I wrote out every step of that process and highlighted who's responsible for that step. Who's going to execute on this? This is what happens if it goes a different way. So within that operations manual, there's also flow paths for different scenarios, because sometimes things don't go down the same way every time. Well, 98% of the time it's going to go one of these three ways. So I go ahead and identify what those three different options are and how we're going to approach each one of those events within its own right, so we're highly effective in each of those situations independently.
Mm-hmm.
And they literally have a book to go off of. I don't know what to do. Let me open the book.
Exactly.
Now I know what to do. Let me go do that. And it takes seconds. And they didn't have to ask anybody. They didn't take any time out of my day. And the operations manual almost is as effective as a manager.
Yes. Actually, you have automated a manager.
Sure.
Is exactly what you've done.
The book is the manager.
Yep.
And then all I have to do is take a little bit of time out of my week and go around and hold people accountable for the operations manual. Are you acting in this way?
Yep.
And then I also have systems in place that give me checkpoints.
So I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But I'll take my playbook, and to me, it's a living document. So
it's constantly evolving.
It's constantly evolving.
Mine is too. Every time something comes up that the playbook didn't account for, guess what? It gets put in the playbook.
Yep. And then it needs to be reviewed every 6 months to a year. Go over all of your processes. Say, okay, this actually doesn't really necessarily work. We need to tweak this here. We need to move this around here.
Yep.
What I'm also getting from how you're answering this, which is so important to sparse out, is how we're the same in our thinking, but then we're different. So
Right.
you definitely conceptualize things on a linear path.
Yes, my concept of this level of automation is linear. For me, it's on a timeline, because I anticipate my growth. I anticipate all the shifts in my business months and years in advance, and have my goals stacked out to that. And I also realize that my processes, systems, and procedures have to evolve and adapt, because things that make sense for a 3,000 personnel company don't make sense for a 3 personnel company. But the inverse is also true. As you're growing from a three person company to a 3,000 person company, there's specific checkpoints that I have baked in where I know we're going to change from this policy to this policy, because I have to be effective with this much personnel and still be able to serve my personnel well and provide a high level of quality to my clients.
I love it. Yeah. And so that just speaks to the fact that you don't have to automate one way. You automate that way.
Right.
And I totally see how it builds. And it's accumulative.
Right.
Mine is more concentric. I think of things more in circles.
Right.
And it's...
So yours is cyclic.
Yeah. Cyclic. Secular. Whatever.
It's
Circles.
Circular.
Circular.
Yeah.
Cyclical, I think.
Cyclical.
Gosh, you freaking financial advisor. You should know this.
All right, man. Well, before we get too deep into arguing over
circles,
grammar and circles, I'm going to go ahead and season up these steaks and get these bad boys going. But
let's do it.
Please continue on, sir.
Well, actually, I don't want to take away from this. This is exciting. This is probably one of the biggest meals that we've cooked on the grill so far.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm knocking everything over. It is big because everything barely fits on my bar.
And then, I can always go back to circles.
Okay, we can always go back to circles. I can doodle some more circles.
Right?
All right, who wants to see one of these bad boys? These things are so impressive. Like, between these and dino ribs, like, there's not any more impressive cuts of meat. Like, there's better cuts of meat for sure. Like, as far as taste, quality, tenderness, but yeah, go, man. This is just impressive.
And in case everyone's wondering why there's so many flies, it actually rained for our first time and our probably last time for the whole year.
Yep.
And so that's why there's all these flies.
Look at this steak, dude.
There you go. Heck yeah.
Bone in.
So everything's skewered today.
Yeah, you got a handle on everything that we're eating.
That's awesome. It's like the closest to eating a dinosaur.
It's pretty close to eating a dinosaur. I mean, this is definitely a Fred Flintstone meal right here.
I love it.
No silverware needed, man. Just pick it up and chow down. I mean, those are just monstrous steaks.
Yes, they are.
That's awesome. I saw them. I had to get them today. I was like, man, we've got to end with a bang. We're going big.
Love it.
Let's do this thing. Look how big these are. They're just freaking hams on a stick, man.
So you're going to season these suckers on the flat side and the rim, and the rim is almost as wide as the flat side.
So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the barrel-aged bourbon, and we're going to go
because it's bourbon here.
Yep.
So we're going to end the last episode off with bourbon.
This is a really sweet rub. This is not normally where you would go with a steak, but I've got a lot of options here. We're going to add some extra spice to it and everything else.
Love it. Man, you can actually smell that rub from here.
Oh, yeah. And we're going to lay this on really thick because as we front sear this thing, it's going to burn a lot of that off. So definitely.
It's got almost like a cinnamon to it.
Yeah, it's got some brown sugar.
Brown sugar, yeah, I smell that.
And some of that going on. And then we're going to go ahead and do the good old salt and pepper. And once again, just go heavy with this. A lot of it's going to burn off, so do not be scared to totally smother. That's a lot of meat. You got to think about the surface area on the inside of the steak compared to what you're actually seasoning on the outside. And really, it's not that much, even if you totally take this stuff on.
Now, for a steak that thick, I would almost think taking a knife and making some cuts in the middle to let the seasoning go in there would be advantageous.
Some people do that. I've never really done that. I've seen it go both ways. In my opinion, I think it dries out the outer part of the steak too much. Yeah. It kills the moisture because it gives it more room to escape.
Yeah.
And so I personally don't do it. I know why they do it, but I'm not a huge fan personally.
Got it. And what's that salt again?
Himalayan pink salt.
Himalayan pink salt.
That's my favorite. Cool. And we're gonna pat all that on there, pack it up, and these steaks are dry. They're not wet. I always completely dry season them.
Love it.
And then we're gonna flip those over and do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll go ahead and season the rim after that. Man, these are freaking monsters. It's just crazy.
Hope you're hungry, Luke.
And I'll tell you what, I told Luke whenever he showed up, I was like, man, Adam picked the wrong night to miss, man.
That's our other film guy,
Other
in
film
case
guy.
You guys are wondering. He went to go watch an Elton John concert.
Well, he's not eating a tomahawk steak.
He's not
there.
eating a tomahawk steak, though.
Or having one of these newfangled kiwi drinks.
Yeah.
It's so good.
It's what happens when you go watch Rocket Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. You know, just so we can say we were thinking of Adam tonight, as this podcast episode ends, we should definitely play an Elton John song.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you two a cappella duet.
Nah, that's not happening.
Tiny dancer.
Hold me closer, tiny dancer.
Oh yeah, man. Chris,
I'm
take it
not that
away,
good.
dude. Take it
Nah.
away.
Nah, I'm good, man.
You got guts. You just sang in front of, you just sang in front of 1 million plus people.
Yeah, it doesn't sound as good because I don't have to shower walls.
Yeah, right?
All right, then we're going to take this 3 chili cilantro. We're going to throw it on the edges. Don't go so crazy with this stuff. It really packs a punch, so we're just going to dust it.
There it is. And Chris, I can absolutely assure you that you don't sound good.
That
Just
I don't
so that
sound
you
good?
know,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I'm not. That is not my thing, man. There's a
Just in
reason.
case you were wondering.
Oh, I'm not wondering. Like, you don't see me up there on America's Got Talent or
America's
any of
Got
those
Talent
other-
or The Voice.
Yeah, no. I do not have the voice.
No future Blake Shelton here.
No. Mm-mm.
But you make good drinks. Heck
yeah, man.
You know, if you actually can just... Can I steal some of that bourbon? I actually just want to pour it straight.
Yeah,
right-
dude, let's
right
do
in.
that, and then I'll make us one more after we try it out, just straight
I
up.
really want to just... Luke, do you want to give me your glass? Do you want to try it straight?
Sure.
I'm just
I
interested
haven't
in...
had Willet in a long time. You know,
I'm interested to get a bake... Oh, so you know what this tastes like.
I've had it before. But
Okay.
You know, it's been,
I am so curious to know what this bourbon tastes like straight. And I guarantee you it's going to be nothing like that drink.
No.
Just a couple thumbs.
Yeah.
Boom. There you go, sir.
thank you.
Oh, yeah. Wow, man.
Yeah, it's kind of wild, isn't it?
Which say it was 94,
94?
and you don't taste it.
That is smooth. Doesn't taste anything like that cocktail drink either.
That is really good, though.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's a great bourbon.
It's a good sipping whiskey.
And you barely get a hint of that bourbon taste when you mix that drink.
Yeah. All right. Man, these are these seasoned up tomahawk steaks. We're going to go ahead and throw these guys on to sear. I am ready.
Boom.
All right. I'm going to do these one at a time just because they're so big. I want to make sure that we get a good sear, and we'll move them up to that top rack as they go.
Part of the reason why I had you pour this bourbon for me was it was like a magic trick, dude. It didn't taste like you put any bourbon in it, but I watched you put bourbon in it. I was kind of
And,
like in
and a healthy amount.
I was
It's
kind of
not
yeah,
like
I saw that. I was like in disbelief. I was like, how am I not tasting the bourbon?
Right.
There wasn't even the burn of the bourbon hitting the back of your throat.
No, not at all. Like,
I don't know how you
it was
did
like
that.
drinking Kool-Aid.
Yeah, that was, dude. Is it the agave you think that kind of gives it that characteristic?
I have no idea, but I did
You
promise
stumbled
you a
upon something.
well-balanced drink, and you got one.
You stumbled upon it, bro.
Oh, man. That smells so good.
It smells unbelievable. So, do I have enough time to delve into this point,
Yeah,
or do
dive
you want to
in.
wait
I'm
till?
going to flip these one at a time. It's going to take about 15 minutes to
feel
go
free to
through this
flip.
cycle, but we're going to do this with the top open.
So definitely not cyclical, because cyclical is like cyclical stocks or companies that are in season
Up today,
and out of
tomorrow.
season. Concentric is the
Okay,
right term.
there
and
you go.
And the fact that I conceptualize my systems of automation being in a circle, and the relationship focus being the nucleus.
Right.
And so I would take my system and say my system comprises of a driving process, a supporting process, what else? Driving process. That's funny. I just pulled a complete mind blank. Supporting process. Anyway, I've got 6 processes that are the drink's already hitting me. That.
Well, you were trying to
circles.
count 6 processes on 5 fingers, so you were one short anyway.
Jerk. So anyway, 6 processes around that, and then as you go through this, and it scales, then the circle just gets bigger.
Right.
So, but anyway, all of that to say this, it's amazing how you can have different ways of conceptualizing this.
Agreed.
Okay, so when it comes to the whirlwind, one aspect that can just derail you is the financial aspect of it.
Yep.
For sure. And you have a great system or a great process in your financial system. And it's a perfect object lesson. Do you mind actually breaking into it? Because I think it drives this first point home.
For sure. Let me flip this bad boy over. Man, that's a nice sear on that one. Look at that char.
It's going to taste amazing.
Yeah, oh yeah. It's going to be fantastic. So anyway, like I said, that's why I don't do the cross hatches on there.
Got it.
So anyway, what you were talking about is financial systems. And so, like, I mix my personal and business a little bit. I mean, they're physically separated, but my systems co-join. So that way my financial system as an individual, as a business owner and an individual kind of seamlessly integrate. So that way I don't have to put so much thought into what money comes from where, goes from where, all these things. And so even just how I structure my wallet, all my credit cards, debit cards, I actually have them layered in my wallet in such a fashion that I know for general purchases, I take the one on top. For business purchases, I take the next one down. The third one down is the one that I interchange with the one on top every 14 days. So that way I balance 2 different accounts.
Now, explain to people why you do this in the first place, because you got to give them some context.
Okay, man. So I pay
So all they're seeing is a fat wad of cards.
fat wad of cards. So I pay for everything with credit cards. No, I do not take on debt. I use my credit cards to perform transactions for the purpose of receiving the bonus points, bonus cash, rewards, miles, whatever. Also reducing my personal liability, which means I'm never taking money out of my bank account and giving that in a transaction. I'm using somebody else's money, Discover, American Express, MasterCard, whatever, in that transaction. So they're liable for any fraudulent charges or anything else that happens there. And I take my money out of my bank account and give to those reputable organizations once a month and pay my cards off in total. And I also have my cards stacked based off of limits to ensure that my threshold for spending for each category isn't exceeded. And so those are just personal systems I put in place, but something as simple as a wallet and the way that my cards are organized to my wallet to ensure that all my bills are paid, that I'm minimizing my personal risk in transactions, because I do a lot of transactions, personal and business, and to keep everything organized so that way I know everything's always taken care of, and it kind of just takes care of itself. There we go. Now
That's what you were waiting for?
That's what I was waiting for. We got some flame going on. But does that kind of help explain? Do you have any questions? Or
well, I mean, like, the point is,
and
and by no means on this podcast are we endorsing that this is what you should do.
No, that's just what I do, and it's just an example of a system that I put into place
Yes.
to manage my finances.
Yeah, exactly. Like someone like me, if I was to go that route, what I would probably do, because I know why you're doing it. It's a cash flow play.
yeah, it's a cash flow play as well as depending on the volume you run on your cards and what cards you're using. I mean, it's potentially a revenue generator.
So, one way that I would further add on, and again, this is just me, but if I was so inclined to do something like that, what I would do is take one of my auto monthly pays and put it on each one of those cards.
Right.
So that they stay active.
Right.
And then I would set up an auto pay from my bank account to pay off that card.
Right.
And I'm achieving what I need to achieve in this whole crazy, when you hold out that stack, what you're basically showing me and what, I mean, like, show the camera that stack again, like, give them a close-up.
Yeah.
Talk about a whirlwind.
Yeah.
Could that distract you from your wildly important goal?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And like
We're
2
gonna call
IDs.
that almost 20. It's not quite 20, but almost.
Dude.
That's a lot of different accounts to manage. That's a lot of different things that balance out. And yeah, I've got most of it on. It takes care of itself. I operate within the system that I designed.
And so that's one example of one aspect of your business, which is the financial component of it.
Sure.
Just the actual money movement
Right.
aspect of
And
it,
then-
and what you're trying to accomplish in the money movement aspect of it. If you didn't have a system in place and you had all of those cards,
It'd be chaos.
it would be chaos. So you have a process in place to control the chaos that does
Control the
not
chaos.
detract you from your wildly important goal
Nope.
of maximizing relationship focus.
Correct. It's very little impact. It just happens naturally. It's part of my daily routine, and I don't really even think about it. And then on the backside of that, I've got more processes in place that someone else is checking my statements, giving me reports on balances, and basically analyzing my financials on a daily and weekly basis, going back to those meetings you talked about, to ensure that everything is as I expect it to be.
Yeah. And that's probably a good transition point because, man, to be honest, we could spend the entire podcast talking about just this.
Right.
And we have to move on. But there's a reason why this is the first component that we talked about. This is probably the most important one.
Right.
And there's entire books out there, like the 4 Disciplines of Execution. That's a good one to read. That are completely devoted to this. So I would highly recommend get that on Audible, read it, listen to it, whatever. But get good on developing systems of automation that control the chaos of your day-to-day whirlwind so that every day you can focus on the wildly important goal of maximizing relationship impact.
Can I just give you an extreme example?
Sure.
Just to split this out and add to the context of this piece before we move past it. There's one guy I listened to, I can't...
Dude, you ripped your finger up good.
Oh yeah, man, it's gnarly, but it's not bad.
Dang.
I'm used to it.
You did it on a peeler.
Yeah, I tell my kids, I was like, I bleed almost daily, and it lets me know I'm still alive.
There it is. Sorry, man. Go ahead.
Man, I cannot think of this guy's name. He's really intelligent. I really like listening to him. I think his last name's Mosey. Anyway, big into sales, online sales, things like that.
Okay.
But he talks a lot about different things that he does to automate just his personal life so he can spend more time focusing on business. Now, this is super extreme,
Yes.
but he eats the same meals every single day because it's a level of automation, which means he doesn't have to make those decisions,
Yes.
which frees up decision-making time to focus on what's his wildly important goals. And so he'll automate his bedtimes. He'll automate his schedule for working out.
I'm a fan.
What he physically eats. And so that's super extreme, but I think it really illustrates what we're talking about here is that
I don't think that's extreme.
I think it's extreme to eat
I
the
don't think it's
same
extreme.
thing all day, every day.
I don't think it's extreme at all.
Man.
Matter of fact, to me, that sounds like a dream come true.
All right, so you're telling me that if we had the exact same meal on every single podcast, you'd have been okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. See, because I didn't have to make the decision on what we're eating on the podcast. I automated that. That's you.
Yeah, that's true. High five on that, man. That is true. Yep. You got me on
But
that
I
one.
totally see the point because how much time in the day do you spend making decisions on things?
I promise just on food, you'll spend over an hour a day making decisions.
That's incredible. That's
just on
60
food.
minutes that you can
'Cause
focus
think
on your
about, what am I going to have
business.
for breakfast? What am I going to have for
Yeah.
lunch? What am I going to have for dinner? And this is where you really got to consider whether you really want a wife or not, because she's going to make this process more complicated for you. do you want for dinner, honey? I don't know.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, let's transition to another point before we get in the weeds on something that's going to potentially get us in trouble.
It was just for fun. Just for fun, but kind of serious.
Yeah. Kidding, kinda.
Kinda. Yeah.
All right, the next principle that we talked about is quality control.
Yep.
For time, price, and value. And man, I really think it's story time, because the best way that we can really drive this home is just talking from personal experience. So ready? On execution, this is what I have for you. Let me read it, then I want you to respond.
Game on.
All right. Identify key promises communicated in your offering to your customer/client, and what systems need to be put in place to ensure that those promises are met. I think it's a tie between chaos control and this for number one.
Right.
Because if you don't do either of those, you don't have a business that's got a
high level of anything.
That's got a jetpack on it.
For sure.
Rocket Man.
Yeah, you're not making it to the moon.
Yeah. Okay, so talk about this one.
Okay, as far as that goes, like, there's a lot of factors that go into it. I like the idea of breaking it down into 3 categories as far as quality control. So, quality is deciphered really by your client, not by you. You can have your perception of quality, but once again, it comes back to how did I present my offering and how am I delivering on that offering? Because your client's basically going to tell you by their satisfaction level how well you delivered on the expectation that you created.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't create an expectation, then that is even worse, because that means your clients get to create their own expectation.
And each one of them is going to be different. It's going to be outside your control.
There's no basis for it.
Yep.
And so you have to make a promise. You have to make an offer. You have to say, this is what we're going to do for sure, I promise. Like, because if you don't, they're going to make things up for you that they don't communicate well back to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're left to mind reading. And that sucks for everybody, because your client's disappointed.
That's a good point, man.
And you're underserving them by default.
Yeah.
Because you don't know where the bar's at. So what I do in my company is I create my own expectations that I present to my customers in my offering, that this is what we're going to do, this is how this is going to work, this is the timeline, and it's broken down into how much is it going to cost. If I give you a price, then that price is good. It should be. That's the expectation.
Right.
If you come in and the price is different in a negative way, as far as
no one goes into an automotive shop and expects the price that is actually given to them is going to be the price when it's all said and done.
They like it to be.
Let's be honest.
They want it to be, but that's not the norm.
Why?
There are a lot of variables, but it has a lot to do with poor systems. They don't have systems in place to stop when it does actually need to cost more for a genuine reason, and spend the time to communicate that. That's a checkpoint in a system. That's something I have in place that says this is the price until it's not, but when that changes, we're going to talk about it before we move forward without.
So do we have time? Do we have time for you to tell me a story? Because tell me a story. Give me a specific example of how you've done that. Or do we need to move on to another part of our meal today?
I am almost ready to throw those on the top rack. That one needs just a little bit longer.
And then we move that to the top rack. What's next, my man?
After we throw that to the top rack, we're going to let those cook. Once the internal temperature gets up to about 100 or so, I'll go ahead and throw the veggies on.
Perfect. All right.
And but an example of quality control. So let me just give you a quick breakdown on just how that works. So basically, we start by creating an expectation.
Within the context of an example, because I want you to tell me a story.
Right.
Tell me a story, Chris.
Tell me a story.
What's an example in a way that you've done this?
An example in the way that I've done this. So I had a customer come in.
Okay, story time. All right.
So, and they were having a weird problem with their car. It was making some shaking vibrations, and it was making some noise. And so they brought it in. We did our free check like we usually do, and we found a problem with the tires.
Okay.
Now, the tires were not the whole source of the problem, but we had to get the tires fixed in order to move on to the next stage of the problem. So Guess what? It's checkpoint time. System in place. We get on the phone. Hey, we found a problem. It's the big part of your problem, but it doesn't fix everything. But I need to fix this first.
Okay.
And then once we get this fixed, then we can dive in and we can start addressing these other issues. So we get new tires put on, bring it back, find these other issues. So go ahead and get approval, fix the other issues, and after the issues are fixed, my technician test drives it, brings it back. He says it's good. Now I actually have a whole person in place for quality control to go and look at. Oh yeah. To go and look at their vehicle, test drive it again, and they had found that something was still making noise. Bring it back in.
Okay, so you had one guy do work.
One guy do work, and another guy second checking his work to make sure that the customer got everything that they paid for.
Okay.
And
this guy is unrelated to the project. He basically just gets a clipboard.
He looks on his tablet, he sees the work that was done, he double checks the work, and then he takes it out for a spin. He comes back from the spin, from a test drive, and he's like, hey man, there's something clunking underneath here. And we get back into it, and the technician looks back at it again and realizes that he didn't get all the bolts tight on one of the struts. So he goes back, he tightens all that stuff up, he goes and does his test drive again, goes back through the process, quality control guy goes on a second test drive. So we've got 4 test drives before that thing left my shop, but without that guy in place, we would have never found that. Guess what? The customer would have came, picked up their vehicle with a sizable bill because we did quite a bit of work, and they're going to go and drive it and hear that noise a block down the road, and they're going to come back furious because they spent a ton of money and I didn't fix their problem.
So before you had this process in place, do you mind me telling my own story?
Absolutely.
All right, dude. So before you bought Danny's, I remember taking my SUV to Danny's.
Yep.
And I remember we took it in for this reason, got the phone call, said, hey, this is what's wrong, this is what it's going to cost to fix it. We're like,
yep.
Gosh, freaking dang it, that's expensive, okay.
Yep, because cars are expensive.
Yep.
Especially post-2020, they're really expensive.
Yeah, well, this was actually, I think, before 2020. Because, again, this is before you bought the business. And then, so this was the previous owner. And I remember coming into the shop, so we pick up the SUV, we drive it home, and as we're driving it home, everything you could think that is scary about a car breaking down happened. Like it was depowering, powering up. All the lights on the dashboard were flashing. I was like, what the heck? So we called, we brought it in. I'm not gonna lie, Martha was furious. I'm like, you know what, just hang on, let's take it back, see what's going on. You know, a benefit of the doubt, because mistakes happen. Was it an inconvenience? Heck yeah, it was an inconvenience. And we took it in, and I remember getting a phone call, and the phone call wasn't even you that called me. It was someone else, which I think was the previous owner. And the call went something like this. Hey man, we forgot to attach one of the actual grounding wires. My bad, sorry.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not narking on him. What else could he have said to me?
Yeah, I
but
mean,
that
it's
still
just
doesn't
the
change
truth.
the fact that I'm like, that's kind of nonchalant.
Right.
I'm pissed. You know? What do you mean you didn't put a grounding wire on there? And how easily, and how easily that could. Can you put some of that agave stuff in there?
Hell yeah, you want me to just mix up another cocktail?
Yeah, just make up another one.
Cool.
We got time.
Yeah. You want one too?
I'm good, man. Thank you.
Okay.
And, that's the difference before you put quality control systems in place to after you put quality control systems in place. Because you know what's the beautiful thing about your process now? You have automated it to where you don't have that experience anymore.
No. And if I do, then I've absolutely done everything I could to prevent it.
Yes.
Within reason. Because every car is going to get test driven 40 miles after the work's done by 2 separate individuals that have no relationship to each other as far as the interest of the job, to ensure that my clients have the best possible experience. And it happens automatically. Everybody knows this is how it works.
Yeah, man.
and it's just how it goes.
So I'm gonna watch you to make sure you don't Houdini this now. Well, you already put the bourbon in. I saw you put the bourbon in.
Yeah. There's no cheats on the bourbon on this one. We put the bourbon in first this time.
So both bitters.
Yep, three shakes of each bitter.
In the agave.
Yeah, and then the sparkling
You
water.
already got the fruit in there.
Yeah.
And then smoke it. That's so interesting. I wonder if the pear smoke kind of acts as like a bonding agent to bring all those tastes together.
I believe so, because I tried it without the smoke first, and then whenever I did it with the smoke, it's noticeably different.
Really?
Like, for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, it really helps balance it quite a bit.
The things you discover when you listen to this podcast.
Yes, that pear smoke balances your beverage.
Pear smoke balances and gives it a wonderful
That's
taste.
perfectly paired for your
And
steak.
I mean, that just looks mantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's amazing. Makes me happy just looking at that. My drink getting smoked over an open flame.
Heck yeah, man. There you are, sir.
Thank you, sir. Let's see if you can achieve the same result. Ready?
Cheers. It has been achieved.
It's been achieved. Oh, I can really smell the smoke on that one.
Same result, man.
Holy cow! Yeah!
It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable! Do you believe in miracles? Wow.
Yep, no magic on this one, man. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
It's unbelievable.
That's awesome. Wow. What a drink. I think that hit that second point perfectly. Do you want to stay on the second one, or you want to move to the third one?
I just want to dive in on one section and break that the three subcategories down just real quick.
Go right
so we hit
ahead,
on
dude.
those.
You don't have to
So-
do anything real quick. We've got time. You still got your tomahawk steaks on the grill. You haven't
and
even
they're
put the
only
veggies on the grill yet.
75 degrees internal temperature, so they're going to be there for a minute. The three subcategories were, what are we looking at in quality as far as delivering on our expectation? That's going to be time, it's going to be money, and it's going to be value. Did I get all?
I think that's what time, price, and value, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's really what your client's concerned about. That's what you need to be concerned about, because the quality is to benefit you from having to redo work or over deliver on a failed expectation, which costs money. It's an efficiency, but it just ensures that you have the same thing every time. I'll tell you what, if you went to McDonald's and your burger tasted different every time you went, would you continue to go?
That's such a good point.
And so it's that consistency, and so that's
Yes.
and so you want it to cost what you promised it would cost, and you want the value to be there. Basically, if I expect this, I'm going to get this, and I know I'm going to get it. And people take that for granted,
Just like this drink, sir.
just like this drink.
Consistency.
There's a level of consistency there.
Here's the consistency.
Here's the consistency. And then just the time, because time is so valuable that I think it's probably one of the most underrated value propositions out there. Because everybody's so busy now, and they don't even think about time as a factor. And there's so many people in the world that time is equated to money and all these other things, and it is in some direct and indirect ways. But we need to value our clients' time and also deliver on that expectation. If you're expecting to be out of a car for a week, as long as I get it done within the week, then you're satisfied because you've already made accommodations. But we stretch it one day past that. Guess what? That's calling mom and see if she can live with another day without her car.
Right.
Well, how's that affecting her? Now, your client's problem is starting to affect other people by your failure to deliver on the time that you said you would. Mm-hmm. And your negative impact grows rapidly. It snowballs, and it creates a huge problem for you and your image and your brand. And so I really think that when I think of building systems for quality control, it is the one thing I could say to wrap it all up would say it's about having a consistent brand from A to Z.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, that's perfect. Yeah.
I can't think of a better way to end that point, actually. Promotes individual accountability. Ready? So, execution. This is what I got.
Okay.
Create methods of verbal and nonverbal communication.
That maintains focus.
Okay.
Oh, what do you think?
This one I'm going to just tell you what I do. I have one specific system in my shop that does most of that for me. I've got other systems and support systems in place for that system, but it is the key system that handles that. So instead of having a standard general manager that just makes sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, I actually have a workflow board.
Okay.
And it's a completely interactive workflow board. And everybody's got their spots on the board for each step of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is a car goes on a card. With
That's cool.
Card
Kind of
goes-
corny, but cool.
Yeah, it's just how it's just the
heck yeah.
reality. And so that card's magnetic. My workflow board's magnetic. And think of going around a board game. You just go in sequence. Well, guess what? I've created this system in my shop that every sequence is another place on the board. And as you finish up at this place, then you move it to the next spot. That next spot is probably another person. The other person, when they finish with the one that's ahead of them in that spot, goes back to the board. They see what the next one is. They perform their task. Whatever their task is documented in the tablet, which actually matches my workflow board. So that way the next person that sees has seen everything everybody's done at every step in the process up until that point. So they find something out of sync, then they can go back and ask the person that was supposed to accomplish that what happened. But what happens with this is there's very minimal communication. They don't have to go and have a 10-minute conversation about that next step, because if you think about even 5 employees that each have a step in the process, just for example, that have to have a 10-minute conversation about each step, that means that a single process, a single workflow, loses over an hour across 5 people to accomplish the same thing that my board does in seconds.
It's a great example of nonverbal communication.
And everything's documented the whole way through. So everybody knows what's going on, and if that's ever lost, then guess what? It's documented for me to review to see if they're following my processes for documentation, so that way I do have the ability to review and ensure that we're operating at the standard that I've set. So I can go back and look at anything a month ago and see if it worked the way it was supposed to work because of my documentation process. But the workflow is my manager. My workflow board is my manager. I don't need a manager. And so the way that ties into individual accountability is my senior leadership, which we'll call them managers, but they don't operate in the same management facility that a lot of managers do within an organization. They're accountable to the system. Well, when I go to my manager, he says, what am I supposed to do? You are to preserve the integrity of the systems I have put into place.
Yeah.
Ensure they are getting done in the manner that I have described in the operations manual. That's what you're responsible for. Well, what if they don't comply? There's a procedure for that. Go look at the procedure. You're going to write them up in accordance with this. You're going to document that, how they violated this, and the agreement that they signed. Everything's tied together. There's no wiggle room. Everything takes care of itself.
What I like about the magnetic workflow board too is that, again, going back to the war analogy of it, you have a team. That team goes to battle every day.
Yep.
And it gives them a visual representation of what winning looks like.
Yes.
And that's exciting.
Yeah, they get to see themselves cross the finish line at the end of the board. It's pass and go. It's collecting $200.
I wonder how many odd automotive shops. Again, it's the A's. I have a hard time with my stuttering problem. Apparently. So like when you're in most mechanics and shops, like I can't imagine they're just like they're isolated. They're at their own station. They don't really know if what they're doing actually matters for that day. Like they don't have context of what they're doing, how it fits into the big picture. And what that workflow board does all of a sudden is that you give a big picture representation of how the team is doing.
Yeah, well,
and everyone can look at it and be like, okay, those again, this is complete war, right? So like those on the front lines, they've broken through the defenses. They're at the next stage, right? So then like, okay, now the artillery can bomb. We're at that stage.
And like
It's
you said,
exciting.
a visual representation. Guess what? I can see where the bottlenecks are because where are all my cards collected in the middle of the board? What step are they stuck
that's
on?
good. Yeah,
and
yeah,
so
yeah.
it gives me a visual representation. I don't need to know the details. If I go back and I look at my board every day for a week and I consistently see that there's a stack of cards in this area, then I need to go back and address my systems for that specific area or that step
Heck
and
yeah.
figure out how to break loose that bottleneck there. And so I get to see it. I don't have to look at the details. I don't need to know the stories. I can see that I've got 10 cards where there should be 2, and that's happened every day for a week or 2.
That's awesome.
There's something broken in my system that I need to fix, and it's right here.
That's great accountability.
Yes.
Absolutely, man. Wow, dude, that's good. That's a great example. I don't have teams of people. So in my industry and in my business, how I'm operating, according to the primary operating principle, I can speak more toward accountability of the team dynamic from advisor to client.
Right.
And that's probably where mine is. And that is the annual review process.
Well, yours is unique. I think that people underappreciate the accountability of the client to the business. And there's a level there. Because
Well, my whole business.
Right.
My
But
whole
y'all
value
are
as a
accountable
financial
to each
advisor
other.
is how well I can build a system of accountability that changes behavior and leads
Right.
to success.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. This is not going to work.
Most people that come to me realize that, hey, I need some form of guidance. People that come to me and like, I don't need your guidance in my life. I just need you to invest these assets and make me money. They don't end up becoming clients.
Because that doesn't fit how you want to conduct business.
Well, and
Well, what happens
and
is
also
it
they're
creates
denying reality.
well, it creates an exception to your processes.
Sure,
Because
sure. without a doubt.
if I do business this way with every one of my clients and you don't want that, then that means I have to deviate from my processes and systems.
Yes.
Which means that if I make an exception for you, where else am I making exceptions? And you're inviting chaos back into your circle.
Yeah. That's a great point. And also, if I can't add maximum impact to your life, why am I here? Like, you
Sure.
don't need me.
Awesome, man.
Right?
So we're at 95 on these steaks internal. I'm going to go ahead and throw these veggies on so they can get going because that steak's warming up pretty quick. So
Heck yeah.
I just don't want to end up with the steaks done and the veggies not. So we're going to go ahead
man,
and
throw it
those
on.
man.
The truth of the matter, though, is what person doesn't need a financial advisor?
Everybody needs a financial
Everyone needs a
advisor.
financial advisor. Successful people need financial advisors.
I'll tell
If
you
you
what.
don't need a financial advisor, I guess you don't need to grow.
Yeah. Turns
And
out
that-
Elon Musk probably has multiple financial advisors.
It's not
Warren
to mean that
Buffett has financial advisors.
it's not like you go to a financial advisor to tell you what to do. You go to a financial advisor
to
because,
discover what your options are.
well, you know how the book of Proverbs says it. In a multitude of counselors, there is safety.
Yes.
The greatest danger that you can assume is the danger you don't know.
That is a lot. That one's big.
That's why I'm your financial advisor.
Yeah, you keep me out of the dark places that I didn't know I wasn't supposed to go into.
Now, that's not to say that I'm smarter or I'm more wise. It just means my job is to put all the pieces together.
You're the best in your lane.
And I stay in that lane.
And
Yep.
I can't be the best in that lane because if I was, then I'd be a financial advisor.
And not what you do.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then the best value I have as far as... So then I know if I'm going to drive the relationship forward, I have to automate a process of accountability between me and my client, and that is the annual review process.
Sure.
My entire business is built around the annual review process. When we first started, and I know we were talking about this with drinks and dinner over at my place last night. The onset of our relationship, we only interacted through the annual review process.
That was it.
Or when I needed to take my vehicles to the shop, which was many.
So basically, our relationship started purely in business. It was transactional for years.
well, not transactional. It was relational.
Well,
but it
sure.
was relational through the annual review process.
Right.
Exclusively. And that's where most clients start. And that's a good place to start. Because if you think about what that means that you have to actually intentionally come into my office. We have to take out your financial plan. You need to update me on all of these different areas. I have things that I need to update you on. And then we need to create action items that move the ball forward. Mm-hmm. I'd say that's a deep relationship. And that's a lot of impact for 45 minutes to 90 minutes of a conversation.
Yes.
For sure. And if I didn't have that process, if I didn't, so I just said that like it was nothing. But what I didn't tell you was the 5 to 6 hours worth of work per client that goes into making that possible. And if I didn't have process to automate that, it would be like close to 60 hours per client. And that's nuts.
Yeah.
Talk about that time.
Yep.
Right? There needs to be a quality control aspect of it, for sure.
Disadvantageous for you and your client. Mm-hmm. If your client had to invest 60 hours to listening to you, they wouldn't be your client for very long.
And it also,
if you had to invest 60 hours into your client, you'd be very limited on the amount of clients you can have.
Yeah.
And it would affect significantly your revenue generation of your business, which is important because without enough of it, you don't have a business.
It would also limit the scope of who I have exposure to.
Absolutely.
Because if it's 60 hours per client, man, you better be a multimillionaire. Right?
You gold digger.
Right. Well, it's just the truth of it.
No,
it's just the truth of it. But if we can automate, then all of a sudden I can have clients from various financial backgrounds.
Yes.
I can have clients that are just going through the Dave Ramsey steps, and I can walk through them on helping them develop financial literacy.
How's that client? I came to you broke and in pain.
At the very beginning, man.
Yep.
And now you and I both have multi-million-dollar businesses in a short period of time.
Yeah, that was 6 years ago. I was doing Financial Peace University with you at that church over on Cherrywood.
And I wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for the amount of automating everything I possibly could as far as the accountability process so that I could just have that conversation as deeply as possible and as impactful as possible in a short amount of time that I had for each client. Right. And even then, I have capacity. There's only so many clients that I can have, right? And that is totally dependent on how well that I can automate.
Yes, I agree.
So yeah, the clients going from the very beginning to clients that are in their 60s and 70s and have multi-million dollars worth of wealth.
Yep.
I can.
Man, those steaks are looking good.
That's looking good. I can serve that entire scope because of the ability to automate in this area of promoting individual accountability from the client to the financial advisor level.
Right.
I remember a lot of financial advisors giving me grief, hard grief, for doing this.
Yes.
And they didn't get it. They were like, how in the world can you possibly charge clients what you charge? Like, it's like just way too much.
Right.
And I'm like, well, you don't get it. I'm in a completely different business than what you are. You're managing portfolios. I'm managing relationships. That's not the same business.
Yeah, I think I remember a year or two in to you really kind of picking up and turning this thing into a successful career. I said, you're not a financial advisor. You're a lifestyle what do I call it?
Lifestyle development specialist.
Yeah, lifestyle development specialist, because that's the level of service that you provided. You didn't advise me on my finances. You advised me on the lifestyle that I wanted for my future.
Thanks, man. That's a huge compliment, bro.
And look at where we are 6 years later. I'd say that you're a successful lifestyle development specialist.
Dude, I own that. That's so much cooler than financial advisor. Financial advisor is lame. So funny story. The firm that I'm at now. So I left my prior firm to go to this one. This one is an independent channel. They allow me to establish my own independent business. There's a broker dealer above me for regulatory compliance purposes.
Right.
Because you can't be truly independent in my firm or in my industry. So the firm asked, they're like, well, in your business, what do you want to be called? And we'll run it through to make sure that.
I know where this is going.
I was like, what the hell? Why not? Lifestyle development specialist. And they were like, never heard that one before. Okay, let us run it up the chain. And they were like, nah, FINRA won't let us allow you to call yourself a lifestyle development specialist. Too much red tape in that. But dude, I tried.
That would have been awesome. You would be the very first lifestyle development specialist in the
Licensed
world.
with my federal licenses that I have. Yes, that's called a lifestyle development specialist. They're like, you can call yourself president. I'm like, fine, president.
Dun, 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 dun,
Yeah, president of my company. Like the most generic title that you can get. But I'm like, why even ask me, right? but yeah, if you're, let's try this, you know? And dude, so I totally rolled with what you said. That's all I'm trying to tell you right now. I totally rolled with what you're trying to say.
That's awesome.
Because I loved it, dude. That's totally how I see it. Yeah, man, I want to develop a lifestyle, and I specialize in the relationship process of partnering with every single relationship, knowing them inside and out, and developing that. Dude, it's beautiful. Yeah, man. So is that good, or do we want to delve on that some more before we go to the last one?
Small little bit on the accountability. I think that it's so important that when you're looking at your systems of accountability, yes, everything I described about my workflow board creates accountability for the individual that maximizes efficiency and production, but that is not the whole package.
Okay.
Within that is my end goal. That's revenue generation. That's the end goal of every boss. That's my wig, if you will. Okay.
Right.
I almost call it a BFG.
Big freaking goal.
Sure, that's not the word I was going to choose, but we'll go with that.
Sure.
And anyway, but my that's the primary goal. Obviously, I want to create the best opportunities, the best everything for everybody within my company. But the whole point of having individual accountability is so you can have individual success as part of a team. And so I need to set up my systems in a way that I can have individuals winning as part of a team. That people can be MVP of their stations for the day or the week or the month or the year, and get recognized for that. And I don't want to make people wait 5 years for promotion, man. If you're ready today, then what are we waiting for? Let's promote you and recognize you. And these systems allow me to do that effectively and know that it's the right answer because they're so visually apparent that you can't miss it. And I did that to myself, so I didn't have to spend so much time focusing on the day-to-day operations to see if they're actually accomplishing everything I want and growing. I developed systems that show it to me, so I don't have to look for it. And it also makes my staff feel really good about themselves because they recognize when they're winning. They get recognized for performing well.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great place to dive into the final section of this conversation, which
measuring
is metrics.
success for the team. Yeah, man. Let's have a philosophical discussion on metrics. That's good. That's a good way to close this. Man, I feel like we've done a good job in this conversation. Of course, the feedback will let us know if we've done a good job in this conversation. But this is a good one to just take that momentum and bring it to a close. So this is what I have.
Well, the bourbon's got me feeling really good about
The bourbon's got you feeling really good. This is what I have. Then I will put the phone away. Take it from here. Ready?
Show me what you got.
Build out metrics to evaluate performance.
That's it?
That's all I got.
How is that possible? This is the last episode of the season. That's all you got?
Well, dude, I mean, you've already teed that up. So just take it home.
All right, I'm going to drive this thing 500 yards right here. Let's
right
go.
now, man.
All right, so metrics matter immensely, but it doesn't necessarily matter which metrics you choose.
Okay.
I'm going to say that again. Metrics matter immensely, but it doesn't matter which metrics you choose.
Okay.
Tell me what you think that means, Jason, and then I'm gonna.
I'm gonna ask you questions.
Put it in.
Well, I'm gonna ask you questions like, what do you mean that surely there's other metrics that matter more? What do you mean that it doesn't matter what metrics you use?
I'm in an industry that uses a lot of really standard metrics.
Okay.
I do not make business decisions based off of those metrics in my business.
So what are those metrics?
Okay, like average repair order is a big one.
Okay.
Gross profit's a big one.
Okay.
Car count's a big one.
Okay.
Some of those matter, but that's not what I make my decisions off of. I use metrics that people in my industry don't even know, such as lifetime customer value.
Oh, how do you even measure that?
It's just an anticipation. Like, basically, okay, let's say a customer spends an average of, I can take my average repair order for a customer and say, cool, they've been here 5 times. On average, they spend $1,000 for easy math. Okay? On average, they come every 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
This customer, assuming that we continue to do business, they continue to be satisfied and all these things, and then you also can account for inflation, some things like that. If you really want to get into some advanced projections, you can say, I anticipate doing business with this customer for another 15 years. And what's crazy is then I can even go deeper than that and say that my customers are going to be so happy they're going to bring me other customers.
Sure. Okay.
And like some of these people, I take care of all their problems for their entire family. So I worked on one dude's truck at work.
Yeah.
And then that work truck turned into, I've got a problem with my personal truck. He brought that in. He was satisfied. My wife's vehicle needs some work. They brought that in. Then 5 years down the road, their kids are driving. They bring that in.
Yeah, man.
So
multiply that, compound it.
Yeah, compound that 20 years down the road. Do I really need to worry about squeezing them for everything today?
Heck no.
I need to worry about forming trust and relationship with them so that way I can have all of their work that they ever need for the rest of their life.
So you're focused on metrics that reflect
the quality
relationship.
of my relationship.
Dude, I'm the same way. Like my industry, they care about production. They care about revenue. Revenue per household.
Yep.
Assets under management. You know what I care about? Deeply served.
Yep. I care about whether you leave me a 5-star review or not.
I care about assets per household. Because assets per household tells me the quality, not the quantity. And to me, that's infinitely more important, right?
Yep. Man, that's looking so good.
Awesome.
Oh, those steaks.
So what are we gonna do with this stuff over here? Just if I can interrupt our conversation.
I'll
right
show
now.
you when we get there.
All right, good. Well, I have trust in you, my friend.
That's good because we have a great relationship.
Yes, it's been built on many years of a relationship.
Love you, man.
Yeah. Okay. Love you too, man.
Yeah.
So, where was I going with that? So, assets per household. Yes. So, assets per household. How I know. And sorry to interrupt your train of thought.
Go for it.
I mean, man, dude, if anything, I just want to build on what. Again, it's amazing how different we are, but yet we come to the same conclusions, just maybe in different ways. When it comes to client satisfaction, when it comes to deeply served, like deeply served, just so people understand what that means in my industry, that means instead of just building one goal into the financial plan, I have 6 goals built into the financial plan.
Yep.
That is someone that is deeply served, right? We call that holistic. I don't have a single client where I don't have a holistic relationship with them. And so I have a process that brings me to that point. Well, I have to have metrics that measure that. So absolutely. Like when it comes to success, what I'm getting from this right now is that you got to make sure that you're measuring the accurate metrics
For your goals.
for what success actually is. And success is driving the relationship forward.
Yep.
So then all
those
your
goals are going to be
process
different for every business owner, every different stage of business. And so I can tell you that my metrics change based off of my stages of my cycle. So we talked about in the beginning that my systems are baked into a timeline. Guess what? My metrics change along that timeline as well because my goals have changed.
Yes. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so-
well, I mean, understandably so. Yes.
And so it goes back to, it doesn't matter what metrics you're looking at. Make sure your metrics make sense for your goals.
That's what you mean. Okay. Because let's face it.
Because you can run numbers a dozen different ways. That, I mean, you go talk to any accountant, he can turn things upside down in 360 and make them look totally different using the exact same set of information based off of the metrics that he's using. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's just financials. And then when you get into exterior metrics of how many hours are we working versus how much production do we have and all these other things, you can measure everything any way you want to. There's infinite ways to measure.
Yes.
And I highly encourage you to find new ways to measure. Not necessarily because they fit you, but because what you have may not be optimal for what you're trying to measure.
At first, I disagreed with what you're saying. I may still disagree with what you're saying. It's, I don't know. Let me throw this out there, and then feel free to tear it apart. The wildly important, your business is going to change
Yep.
because new levels, new devils, to use a cliche, right?
I like that cliche.
Good. My mom gave it to me.
I like
The wildly important goal, though, it doesn't change. The wildly important goal is focus on maximizing relationship growth.
Yep.
So your business is going to change, but you still want to use the same metrics that ties the automation of the processes back toward the wildly important goal, right?
Right.
So it does matter what metrics you use.
It does matter which metrics.
Does that make
you-
sense?
Yes. So you have to use the metrics that are most important to you, but I can't tell you which metrics those are, and there's a good chance that most people that you're talking to can't tell you that either, and that's what I mean by that.
Sure. Because
So
your
what
industry
I'm
uses metrics
that
that are completely opposite to what
Well,
you're
and
using.
even with my,
and I'm using that's completely opposite to what
Right.
I'm.
So what I mean by that is it doesn't matter which metrics you use fundamentally, as long as the metrics you are using are most effective for achieving the goals that you desire.
Got it.
So that's to say, okay, well, I'm going to count this X, Y, Z. Well, that X, Y, Z doesn't make any sense for your goals. So why are we measuring X, Y, Z if your goals are A, B, C?
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense.
And so people that are measuring ABC need to use metrics for ABC. People that are doing XYZ need to use metrics for XYZ. And
Okay.
those are totally interchangeable. You might be an ABC business today that's going to be an XYZ business in 5 years. You need to account for that as well.
Interesting.
Your met-
I never thought of it that way.
that,
So
does
what do
that
we
make
got? Are
sense?
you turning these, or are you just moving them off of the heat?
Okay, these are pretty close to being happy. I am officially moving them off the heat for the purpose of throwing on the shrimp.
Ah, the shrimp.
Yep, I didn't forget the last piece of this puzzle.
I figured we were missing something. I was
you-
like, wasn't this surf and turf?
Yeah, don't you remember that?
Well,
that-
what's this secret sauce over here? You gonna tell us what the secret sauce is
The
all about?
secret sauce is specifically. Oh man, these look amazing.
It's gonna be good, bro.
So the secret sauce is nothing more than sautéed onions, jalapenos, cilantro, garlic.
And you throw
sautéed
that
in-
right on the steak?
Sautéed in butter, and it's already been warmed up and sautéed together. Yeah, we're just
So
gonna-
it's done.
yeah, we're gonna throw that right on top of the steak after we pull it out while it's resting,
Beautiful.
so those juices can meld together.
Make sure to get some good B-roll of that, Luke. That's gonna be beautiful. Heck yeah. This is probably the best we've eaten, and we've eaten pretty good.
We've eaten really good.
You
Don't-
have
don't
taken
say
the bar,
pretty good.
dude, and you have raised it to the next
I know
level.
people that are jealous of what we're eating on our podcast that have just heard about it yet
Yeah.
not even seen it. So I know
Like my wife,
my wife.
if I'm being totally honest.
So yeah, I mean you gotta go on with the bang. It's the last one of the season,
Heck yeah.
and so I want to make sure that everybody's getting everything they deserve.
And man, I'm not
Including
trying
me.
to be confrontational just for the sake of being contrarian. Like, I just want to get this right.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that the metrics A, B, C, or X, Y, Z are properly identified. There has to be a grounding agent that keeps you centered through the entire development of your business.
Right. And that's where
So I don't know if you can switch from A, B, C to X, Y, Z. Does that make sense?
I think you can, but it goes back to ground zero. So this is where it comes to your circular,
Concentric.
concentric,
Took a while to figure that out,
concentric
too.
approach to your systems is the same way as my linear approach. Where it all starts with, managing the chaos, which is day to day,
Yes.
and then we move into goals.
Yes.
And those goals are naturally progressive because goals are always based around growth. We never plan to go. We never plan to suck at life.
Quality control, making sure you're delivering on what you've promised.
Sure.
Yeah.
And anyway, you do all these things. Well, those things are naturally going to progress as your business progresses, which means that your metrics have to change as your business grows. Not 100% of them. You might still use You might be an ABZ business.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah. So the core stays the same, but you might be adding
Right.
and taking away as things
Sure.
move. Dude, yeah,
And
totally.
So, I think that being rigid in your mindset and your execution to some level is death to a business because
Absolutely.
times and people change and
You have to evolve.
be flexible enough to change with them. And flexibility is a cornerstone of success.
But the one thing that isn't changing, and that probably won't change with time, is that relationship has to be the focus.
Agreed.
So those core metrics definitely have to stay.
Agreed.
Okay. Man, I mean, this is good, dude. If someone has stayed with us for every single one of these episodes and they seriously have questions like on how to do this type of stuff, at this point, dude, honestly, I'll just tell you where my heart's at. I want to work with those people one-on-one. Like, I don't care. I won't even charge you. Like, if someone seriously got these type of questions at this point and they like reach out to us and they're like, hey, how do I do this? I mean, I would love to unpack this stuff.
I think it'd be really cool to do some lives to where we can have some some genuine interaction in the future. So if that's something that you guys want, definitely leave some some
lives. That's a good way to say it.
I think that we'd like to do some lives, and let's get some genuine interaction with you guys so we can ask your questions and respond to some of our haters' stupid comments and and some other stuff along the way.
I don't think we're gonna have a whole lot of haters, man, just being honest.
Man, if you don't have haters, you're not winning yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but like seriously, like,
Nah, but for real,
if you're a hater, like, you've got better things to do than to comment about us. Like, we've been hated on so much that whatever you have to say is not going to affect us.
I don't care.
In any way, shape, or form.
We've eaten a lot of shit to get to where we're
Just
at.
stop watching the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like literally, there's so many other podcasts out there that you can listen to. Just stop watching this one.
Yep.
That shrimp cooks up pretty quick, right?
Shrimp cooks so quick.
It's been a long time since I've cooked shrimp on the grill. I am really stoked about this. I can't even remember the last time. It's been a couple years.
Well, I'm gonna let those cook for just a minute longer, and then I'm gonna go ahead and open up the sear plate and give them a little bit of char, and then everything should be good to go.
Heck yeah.
In fact, those steaks actually need to come off and start resting. They're at 130, so that's right at medium. So that's how you cook a freaking roast on a stick. To
There
perfect
you
temperature.
go. You know what would be a good way to end this conversation, man?
What is that?
So we've talked about how our lives have changed in the last 6 or 7 years since we've been implementing the primary operating principle.
Yep.
And you and I have been working together in our own businesses and developing each other's businesses. Like I've said, ooh, look at that. Heck. Oh, you can see the seasoning come out with the juices. Yes. You're going to
man.
get that bourbon seasoned
smell.
flavor on it. Perfect.
Now, as I let those rest, I'm gonna go ahead and throw.
The secret sauce.
Yeah, it's
Call it
just-
the secret sauce.
okay. It's a secret sauce.
It
but,
makes it sound
But
fun.
I already told everybody what the secret was, so it's not a secret anymore. So now it's the unsecret sauce,
The boss sauce.
and it's not even really a sauce because
Call it
it's
the boss
a
sauce.
topping.
Well, call it the boss. Oh,
The boss topping.
The boss
topper.
the Boss Topper. It looks like something that you wouldn't even be able to get at Outback, to be honest with you.
Oh, Outback couldn't touch this shit. I'm serious, man. That's
I don't
not
even know a steakhouse you could go to here in Midland to get something like this, to be honest with you.
Nah.
There's like a sacred silence as we watch this
Oh,
before.
I know, right? Like nothing. We're like those bulldogs that like we're trying to hold the drool behind the lips, like oh, it's so good. Oh my goodness, man! It smells so good. So let's keep the flies off of this amazingness and let that rest while we're wrapping up the shrimp and the veggies.
Okay, so as we're wrapping off the shrimp and the veggies, dude, it's been 6 episodes. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. This has been an amazing experience. Shout out to Luke and everyone from Film Hunter Media making this happen, dude. Thank you guys. This is awesome. This has been great. So we've talked about, again, the last 6-7 years of how we've started our own version of the primary operating principle, how we've gotten to this level, how you and I have spoken into each other's businesses. Like I've said before in the past, your DNA, like your fingerprints are all over the DNA of my business. And I'm totally serious about that. So the next 6 to 7 years, what do you hope? What do you envision personally as you continue down this path on doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on the primary operating principle and scaling?
That's my next thing is scaling. That's what the next 5 years looks like for me.
Describe it. Like throw it out there. Speak it into the universe. What are you hoping the next 6 to 7 years looks like?
Man, the next 6 to 7 years, I hope to have 2 more locations. I hope to diversify my services and start working on European cars, which I currently don't work on at all. Develop a staff to operate that, but still use my core foundation of the primary operating principle that I'm operating out of now and all of that expansion, and use that to assist me in expanding. Yeah, I think I'd like to be at 3 locations with diversified services, operating at a maximum level of service in 6 to 7 years.
Awesome.
That's where I see myself, along with furthering my real estate venture as well. I mean, that's kind of they blend together.
Yeah. Personally, do you want to add anything personally to that? Where do you hope personally to be in the next 6-7 years? I mean, the business and the personal to us is so integrated. It's hard to separate them.
It's hard to separate. So, I mean, I really want to be a big part of my family's lives. I am already, but I want to.
Sure.
I want to have more availability and more time for myself to spend with my family. That's one of my big things. I want more of everything. I think that's the best way to put it. I want more of everything.
Yeah.
Like, and not in a greedy way, but in a selfless way. Like, I want to be the best me for everybody around me.
Yeah.
I want to be the best dad to my kids. I want to be able to provide them opportunities I never had in every aspect of their life.
What do you think's a realistic expectation? Honestly, a realistic expectation. Do you think you can be, in the next 6 to 7 years, do you think you can be double of what you are? Triple?
I think I can triple
10
up.
times?
I think. Okay, I can triple my size and 10x my value.
Oh, wow. Okay. Please continue. What does that mean?
Okay. I believe in scaling, that as you scale, efficiency improves, which means that as you grow, you can do more with less.
Yeah.
And so when I say I can triple my size and 10x my value, I think that I can literally triple my size as far as like reality, like 3 shops, 3 times as much staff, 3 times as many everything. But I can do it so efficiently at that size that my overall value is 10x.
Yeah. 100% love it. You know that I'm totally behind that. That goes to the old story of the Clydesdale horses, right? Like, you put 2 horses together and they pull not 2 times their weight, but 3 times.
Right.
And then if you can train them to work together, then they pull 5 times.
Right.
Right? And that's kind of speaking to the same idea of 10xing your value.
Right. So yeah, I want to 10x my value and triple my size.
That's a good way of putting it, man.
I think I want to do the same thing in my personal life.
Yeah.
I want to have 3 times as much impact, but I want to 10x the value.
Okay.
Like, I think that I want to do that. Like you said, they're really conjoined. Everything we do, there's no barrier. I'm never off.
Right.
I'm always
That's true.
I'm always on, and it's just like, what hat am I wearing? Am I dad? Am I husband? Am I uncle? Am I boss? Am I mentor? Am I coach?
Yep.
Doesn't matter. I'm always on. It's just, which hat am I putting on this time?
Right.
And at a certain level we're playing at, the hats change themselves.
Yes, they do.
You just show up and execute.
Yes, they do.
I don't. Did I
Yeah,
put that well?
that makes sense, man. That's poetically put.
So that's where I see myself. I see myself triple volume, 10x value.
Heck yeah, man.
And I think that's a great goal. And I think it's achievable. And I think it's worthwhile and admirable.
I like what you told me last night. Like, just imagine, I mean, what we've done in the last 6 to 7 years.
Imagine what
we'll do in the next 6 to 7 years.
And to be what's crazy about that is like, but my reality is I'm probably going to 5x my size and 40x my value because of the same thing I told you last night. We overestimate what we can do in a year. We underestimate what we can do in 5.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
And so if I'm underestimating at 3x, 10x, then that means I'm probably 5x, 30x.
Yeah. Yeah.
In reality, on a larger scale.
The way I've put it is that God continually exceeds my expectations. Like, I plan on achieving this, and then I'm pleasantly surprised that it's compounded. It's so much more significantly. Yes.
And those things happen all at once too. It's crazy. You actually think that you're failing, and then you realize you just failed up, and you were just looking in the wrong direction.
I thought I was failing until I looked down and realized, well, I'm pretty high up.
Right. Cool. Well, I will tell you what, man. We did not fail on dinner tonight. I'm gonna go.
It's good to go.
It is good.
Is that a wrap?
That is a wrap.
All right.
So we're gonna go ahead and pull these veggies off. They are good to go. We're gonna pull this shrimp off. They are good to go. And we're gonna go inside and dive into this amazing smorgasbord of Texas goodness.
Wish you guys were here right now. Y'all could enjoy this with us.
Oh, show.
Oh, wait a minute. Surprise.
What's a
surprise? Surprise. Special announcement. We have a wrap-up party, special episode coming your way. It's Party on the Patio. And
I thought it was Party at the Pavilion.
Oh, yeah, I have a pavilion.
It's a pavilion.
I have a series of patios called a pavilion, and we're going to have a party at it. And that is the next wrap-up episode. We're going to sit down. We're going to debrief this entire season, talk to you. We're going to bring our camera crew in.
Yeah.
You'll see Luke, and you'll see Adam for the first time.
And our families.
And our families. You'll hear our kids running in the background while we're on my pavilion. We're going to wrap it all up. We're going to talk about, like I said, this season, but also next season.
Season 2.
We're going to tease some of that. So thank you all so much for being a part of this conversation. Again, I'm Jason Gould. This is Barbecue, Bourbon, and Business. Thank you for being a part of Mastermind Midland.
Y'all have a great day. Until next time.
God bless.